Hi everyone, this is Abby from Abigail Cecile. So one of my online ornament finishing class students recently reached out and asked how to create a puffy ornament. She had a few ornaments from the 90s that are created using a little bit of a different technique. And so because this is a different technique than I normally teach in the ornament finishing class, I wanted to create a special video for her and thought it'd be fun to share it all with you. So let's create a puffy needlepoint ornament together. So this type of ornament is very different from your classic needlepoint ornament, which is going to have the needlepoint and the fabric backing wrapping around hard boards. Instead, we're going to sew this ornament together and flip it right sides out. We're going to use a sewing machine, and it's going to be completely squishy. So essentially, it's almost like creating a tiny pillow. Begin by placing your needlepoint face down or right sides together with your backing fabric. Now I'm using a hand-dyed cotton velveteen, which is the thicker fabric, and I feel like the thicker fabric works really nice here for this project. So pin the needlepoint to the velvet in a few places. You'll see you want to flip it over to the back and make sure there aren't too many wrinkles back there. Now my needlepoint has already been cut into a circle. That's not necessary. You can simply pin the canvas to the velvet without trimming it at all. Now you'll need to make sure you leave 1.5 inches opening at the very top of your ornament. So I'm using a ruler here and I've measured it and made sure that I have an actual 1.5 inches in between the two pins, and I've marked that with the two pins to make sure that that's where I start sewing and stop sewing. We need that hole to both turn the ornament right sides out and to then later tuck the cord in and out of the ornament. Now you're going to want to leave at least 1.5 inches gap. My ornament is quite small, it's about 3 inches. So if you're doing a large ornament, you'll definitely want to leave a larger gap so that you can get all of the canvas and the backing fabric turned right sides out. Next, you're going to sew the ornament together along the stitched edge, leaving 1.5 inches gap at the top. So I'm using a sewing machine for this, and I'm just using standard sew-all polyester thread. And make sure that you lock the stitch in place when you first begin stitching and when you end. Now I'm sewing with a standard straight stitch, but it is slightly shorter than the average. So the stitches are a little bit smaller, and I think that's helpful for sewing on canvas. And you're just going to sew all the way around. Again, you're sewing right along that stitched edge. Notice that as I sew, I'm just sort of carefully turning around the curves and lifting the actual foot whenever I need to. Now I can do this because my needle is in the down position. So if you're going to ever lift your foot, make sure your needle is first down. Once you get all the way around, make sure to lock your stitch in. Next, using sharp large scissors, cut around the ornament, cutting both the canvas and the backing fabric. So you're going to want to leave about anywhere from 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of canvas and backing fabric around the ornament. Next, grab some small sharp embroidery scissors and cut tabs all the way around the ornament, but leave that top 1.5 inches uncut. So make notches that are triangular, taking more canvas and fabric than you usually would. Now don't cut all the way up to the stitched edge. You're going to want to leave 1 or 2 canvas threads in between your cut and the actual stitching. Now I'm starting at the top where I started stitching, and I'm going to go all the way around and stop 1.5 inches away from my starting point, again where I stopped my stitching, leaving that 1.5 inches uncut. So we're going to cut those notches later. I find that if you cut them before you turn the canvas inside out or right sides out, those tabs just get really frayed and we don't want that. So in the online ornament finishing class, I teach you to cut tabs that are flat on the top. Notice that these tabs are coming to a point. They're a triangle shape. And you do that because when you're bringing these tabs around a board and either gluing or sewing them down, you need to have a good firm tab to work with. But we're not doing that here. All we're doing is really reducing bulk. And because the ornament is sewn already, we don't have to worry as much about fraying that tab. Next, finger press and then gently iron your canvas tabs down to the canvas back. So this will really help in the next step. Next, turn your ornament right sides out. So just gently, really gently and slowly ease your ornament right side out, pushing it through the gap you left at the top. Now, one trick is to steam your ornament with your iron as you do this. So the steam just really helps to relax the canvas and make it a bit easier to manipulate. And you can also use like a pen or something like a tool that will just, you can stick in there and kind of help to gently ease that canvas out. And you really want to kind of press along the seam to just make sure everything is turned out and looks really nice. Be careful as you do this if you have long stitches on your canvas or kind of more delicate decorative stitches. You don't want to, in sort of pulling that canvas, you don't want to accidentally pull your stitches. Next, you're going to stuff your ornament with stuffing. Now, I like to sort of pull apart the stuffing a little bit before I shove it in there. I feel like this just helps it from being clumpy inside the ornament and gives a really nice even distribution. Stuff it until the ornament just feels really nicely filled and even and chubby. And also make sure to pay special attention to the gap at the top that the hole of the top that you're shoving the stuffing through. I find that the more we push the stuffing down, typically you'll have little air pockets at the very top. And so you just want to kind of take special care that in those corners right there, that those are well stuffed. Next, create a few tabs at the top of your ornament where you left that inch and a half or more uncut, and then gently tuck that canvas down into the ornament and also gently tuck the velvet. Really kind of play with the shape and the way it looks and try to get it to have a smooth, rounded top and a sort of smooth transition from the stitched edge to where we're going to be hand sewing this shut. Now you may add a few more tabs than I did here. Again, my ornament is quite small, so really I only needed to create 2 tabs at the top there. And you can also create tabs in your velvet. I didn't have to do that here, but if you have a larger gap, a larger ornament, you may need to do so. Next, you're going to pin down your cord, and I've already created my cord here. And you're going to follow essentially the same process as you would for a more standard needlepoint ornament of inserting the cord, wrapping it around the ornament counterclockwise, and then creating the loop. And pins are great to use here. Now, the only difference between a puffy ornament like this and a more standard needlepoint ornament is that the gap at the top needs to be adjusted to really look its best, then pinned shut, all at the same time as you're pinning down your cord. So I've placed a center point pin, and this is going to help me to position and create my loop. So again, I've pinned the cord where it comes out of the ornament so that it's just to the right of the center point, and then I'm going to lay it down behind that center point marking pin and continue pinning it down counterclockwise around the ornament. And I'm just carefully and sort of consciously pinning shut that gap and then pinning the cord down along the seam. And once again, now that I'm back up to the top, pinning that gap shut, pinning the cord down, and then I'm going to pin my cord just to the left of my center point pin like usual. And then I'm going to bring that cord up and back down to find my loop length, marking it with a pin and then placing some glue on the cord and working that in so that when it becomes tacky and dries, I can just cut right through. Alternatively, you could put some tape down, wrap it around your cord, and then cut through the tape. Anything that gets that cord to hold without fraying and unspinning, essentially untwisting, when you go to cut it, because we want to get rid of that knot before we shove it into the middle of the ornament. Now you could, because this is a puffy ornament, you really could shove that knot into the middle of the ornament, but it's still nice to work with a cleaner end. When you go to shove the end of your cord into the center of your ornament, you may need to pull out some of the pins and then just work on your loop. So you're inserting that cord as usual into the ornament to the right of the center point, as where the cord is going up off the ornament to the left of that center point pin where you've marked it. And you just want to play with that until you really like the way that your loop looks. Also make sure that the cord where it's coming up off the ornament, again, that's pinned. Where it's going down into the ornament, that's pinned. Just make sure it's all really well pinned. So next you're going to use a different process to sew down your cord. You need to begin by sewing that top gap closed, and you're going to do this without sewing the cord down, so you'll be sewing around the cord. Now I'm using a sharp needle and sew all thread so that you can see what I'm doing, but the best thing to use here would be invisible thread. So you're going to start by sewing that gap shut using what is called an invisible stitch. To stitch an invisible stitch, tie a knot and then anchor your thread in the fabric side. Now you can start on the canvas or the fabric side, it doesn't really matter, but I find the fabric side easier to start in. And I'm going to show you an illustration of what an invisible stitch looks like. So you're going to push the needle into the folded edge of the canvas. Now this means that you're going to need to first put your needle underneath the cord. So to push it underneath the cord, you're not going through the cord, you're going underneath the cord. And you're going to push that needle into the folded edge of the canvas directly opposite where you anchored your knot. And then you're going to take the needle and you're going to push it along the folded edge of the canvas 1/8 to 1/4 inch and then push it back out. Next, push that needle back under the cord to the fabric side. Again, don't go through the cord, go under the cord. Position the needle in the fabric directly opposite to where you came out of the canvas. Take the needle through the fold 1/8 to 1/4 inch and then pull tight, and you're going to repeat that. Now, when you get to where the cord is coming in and out of the canvas, you're just going to take few stitches back and forth through all that cording that's coming in and out. Again, you're not going through the cord that's laying on top of the ornament, but anything that's coming in and out of the ornament, you're going through and you're just closing that gap, getting that gap closed shut and getting the cord, sort of the loop, entrance and exit nicely tied down. Now, if you find the invisible stitch to just be kind of tricky and you're not a fan of it, that's totally okay. You can also try doing like a classic whip stitch where you're just going back and forth. Again, it's going to be kind of, you're going to have to put your needle under the cord and make sure you're not sewing the cord down, but that might be a little bit more straightforward. So once you've sewn the gap closed, you're going to continue clockwise around the ornament, sewing the cording down. Now we're going to use a different stitch to sew down the cord than the one I usually teach, which wouldn't work super well here. So this is a great stitch that a lot of finishers do use. We're going to attach the cord by going through the canvas and backing fabric, then up and over the cord with invisible thread, angling the thread so that it nestles down and disappears into the crease between cording twists. So while doing the stitch, you're not actually sewing through the cord at all. The cord is simply held down and in place by the invisible thread. So again, push your needle from front to back, catching the canvas and backing fabric, and then pull through. Then place your invisible thread up and over the cord, nestling it in the crease between the cord twists. Then position your needle at the middle of the base of the next twist, push your needle through, and repeat. Now I find that if I position my needle in the middle of the base of the next twist, push through there to the back, then the thread just goes down really well into the crease between the twists. Now, depending on your twist, you may want to go straight back with your needle or angle it slightly so that the thread is positioned well from the back to go up and over and into that crease as well, but it's less important. If you see a little thread from the back, that's no big deal. Now I am placing a stitch every 2 twists. So every other twist, if I look at my ornament, every other twist crease has a stitch holding it down. Now you could do fewer, so kind of bigger stitches essentially, but I find that having every other twist tacked down is just a really nice look and keeps the cording firmly down to the ornament. I'm also pulling pretty tight. I want that invisible thread to be nice and tight down in that crease. So when you get back up to the top, you're going to need to tack down the cord where it rises up and off of the canvas to create the loop. So you just want to tack down and you're actually going through the cord this time. Sewing through the cord, sewing through the canvas and the backing fabric, sewing through the ornament. You want to tack that cord right where it rises up and goes into the loop. Tack that down to the ornament, just so that it looks really nice and even and consistent. You want sort of a continuous cord feel all the way around the ornament. And once you've got that nice and tacked down, then you can continue with your over the cord loop stitch. So now that I'm happy with the way the cord looks as it's rising up off the ornament into the loop, I'm going to take one single stitch in between the loop, tacking that cord down, again, nestling that thread down into the crease of the cord. I may need to take one more stitch, or I may be back up to where I began. As soon as you get to where you started the stitch, just go ahead and tie off your thread. Once you've tied off, pull out your pins, and then I like to just sort of squish the ornament gently to help evenly distribute all the stuffing within the ornament. Congratulations on making your own puffy needlepoint ornament.